Okay, we ready?
All righty,
Where are
welcome
you?
to Breakneck through the Bible. Exodus,
What page?
20, class number 42, chapter 23, verse 1, page 433. 433 in the Stone Compass. Okay, so page 433 in the Stone Compass. If I do break up, I'm not sure how well the internet is doing. If I do disappear, hang in there and I'll come back.
Chapter 23
Or
sentence what?
1, chapter 23, verse 1.
Okay.
Okay, chapter. Good. Good. Okay, so Kenny, you want to read chapter 20? So hopefully you all out there watching had a great Sukkot, Vinat Saris, and Pastora, and hopefully we will take sitting in God's tent, sitting in His home in the Sukkah. We'll take that indoors with us and have that continual guardian that extra protection that God gave us as we sat in the Sukkah, as we take it indoors and be protected as well. So so that's hopefully we will all be at that space of living, as it's called, with sail tail, right, in the shadow of God, right, and kind of be a place where God protects us. And He showed His beautiful protection for us as we went ahead and during the holiday of Sukkot, we had a beautiful weather here in Dallas, Texas. It was unbelievable, unreal. Right? The picture perfect weather that we have, and actually continue to have. So thank you, Hashem, for that wonderful protection that you have given us. Okay, so good. So chapter 23, verse number 1. Kenny, take it away.
Do not accept a false report. Do not extend your hand with the wicked to be a venal witness. Do not be a follower of the majority for evil, and do not respond to a grievance by yielding to the majority to pervert the law. Do not.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Each of these are like 1 or 2 Torah commandments. Each one of these half verses, right? Right. Now, do not be a follower of the majority for evil. This is the big one. What does that mean? Do not be a follower of the majority for evil.
Don't be swayed by the majority. Even just follow the law.
Say it again.
Don't be swayed by the majority. If you think they're wrong, follow the law.
Right, meaning that if the majority of people say one thing and you feel it's the wrong thing, right? So it means you can't go ahead and you can't just say, well, it's the majority, so I'm just going to follow the majority. You have to stick up for what is right. Right?
But don't we learn that from the spies, Bensi?
That what?
That not to go after the majority. You stick to what you think is right. It was 2 against 10. Okay,
that's nice. Right, that's a nice thing. Did you see that? So I never heard in that context, but that's a good proof where you see that, right? It's a good place where you see that, even though there were 12 spies and 10 came back with an evil report, right? The 2 that did not just follow along with the other 10.
Right.
Right. So that's a good source for that. Okay. But because normally you say we're supposed to follow the majority, right? When it comes to a right, when it comes to a Jewish question, right, and you go to a Beis Din, right, you go to right, to a court of Jewish law, so, and two rabbis say kosher, one rabbi says not kosher, right, we follow the majority. Right? That's a traditional case of where we follow the majority. Right? But where majority of people are doing evil, right, that doesn't mean, okay, well, they're the majority, we should follow them, because if that's the case, you have to stand up and say you're not going to follow the evil. Okay? Good. Right, and again, then follow, did not respond to a grievance, isn't the majority to revert the law, which is good. Then, do not glorify a desperate person in the grievance. What does that mean?
Don't build somebody up inappropriately, and don't give in to them just because they're poor, and you still stay by the law.
Is to still follow the law. Now, right now, you think you're going to be a tzaddik and you're going to rule in favor of the poor person, even though he really owes the money. You're going to say he doesn't, right? So the Torah is saying you can't do that, right? I mean, what you can do is you can say he owes the money, then you can offer to pay it for him, right? But you can't go ahead and you can't, say he's fine. Right?
This would be a proof against social justice.
And, what do you mean by that?
Well, this new saying like, oh, you're a victim, so you have to be in the right. No, that's not God's way.
Correct. Right? It means you have to look at it and you have to see what the right thing is, and that's what we're going to do. Right?
That's a very good observation that Bree just made.
It is.
Down to the current situation.
Right, the current right, meaning it does it doesn't make a difference, right? What the right means two wrongs don't make it right.
Right.
Right, you know what I'm saying? That you have to do, right? What's right is right. You know what I'm saying? Then you have to go take a look. And again, so there might be an issue, and so you might be responsible to straighten up the issue, right? But it doesn't give you it doesn't give you the right to go ahead and to pervert justice, right?
But that's an interesting point that you made, Ben. In other words, if a person is poor and they get the judgment against them and they have to pay money which they don't have, then you can, if you offer to pay the bill for them, then it's a win-win situation. You haven't perverted justice and you've helped them out, with something they can't afford to do. That I never thought of that answer. That's very good.
King David used to do that, right? That was David HaMelech used to do that. Right? King David used to do that.
Wow, how?
Now he would judge the case, who was guilty, who was innocent, right? But then he would go ahead and he would pay for the poor person.
How do you like that? I never knew that.
David HaMelech did that?
Yeah, sure.
That's beautiful.
Right. So here, you see, the Torah has to make this, and it's interesting because you might think, right, or I might have thought, that you would say, well, let me save the poor person the embarrassment, right? And let's say that he's not guilty, right? Which would really be a kind thing to do, right? But once you're in a court, like when you're in a Jewish court, at that point in time, you have a responsibility to judge the truth.
Very interesting.
And so you have a responsibility to judge the truth, right? And so, and again, because when you're in a court, right? Remember, you're standing in front of God, right? That's why witnesses or anyone who comes into a Jewish court, the Jewish court sits, and all the plaintiff and the witnesses all stand because they're standing in front of God, right? Because it's God who's there in the thing, and you don't have the right to go ahead and to pervert what's going on.
And the judges are held responsible to Hashem for their
Right.
rulings.
Right, sure. Right, like that. That's very important, right? For them, that's what they're doing. Right.
I'm
So
just curious, if a person is starving, literally starving, and they go into a store and they steal a loaf of bread, if that comes to a court, they would be judged guilty, even though they, yeah, okay, that's what I wanted to know.
just because you're starving, meaning it's the right means when they get to heaven, right? When they get to heaven, are they gonna be held liable for stealing? That's really your question. Right? And so the answer is that they were going to die. For sure, that was the right thing to do. Now, just because it's the right thing doesn't mean that they don't have to pay for it, or that they won't be found guilty in the court to pay for what they took. But obviously, right, it's a matter of life and death. That supersedes, almost all the other commandments in the Torah.
I didn't understand what you said.
Meaning, let's say somebody's starving to death. And they're going to drop that unless they walk into the store and take a bite out of bread in the store, right? Should they go into the store and take a bite out of the bread? Or should they, well, you know what, it's not mine, I should die.
Okay, obviously they have to eat the bread.
I mean, that's bread. But now let's say the store owner comes and says, hey, you're stealing my bread, I want you to pay for it. And you take it to a Jewish court. Is he going to be responsible to pay the money?
Sure.
Sure. Right? Means he did the right thing, but he's still going to have to pay for it. Right? You know what I'm saying? Like there's still that responsibility.
Okay.
So basically what you do is you don't take someone's dignity away.
Well, was not a question. Again, here you might have thought that you might do it in a way to save the person's dignity. The problem is that right. The problem is that you're going ahead and you're you might think that would have been the right way to do it, right? Which was to go ahead and to which was to go ahead and to not, right? Which was to go ahead and not find him guilty of it, right? But the Torah says you can't do that. Do not glorify a desperate person in grievance. You can't do that.
Right, but it also does something to preserve that person's dignity and not feel like I've been given special consideration for any reason.
Right. Okay. Right. You can look at it that way.
Okay, taking this a little further, if someone's in dire straits,
Right.
wouldn't the court or someone maybe have rachamim, mercy on them, and help them some way, maybe to get a job or?
Sure. Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
No, right. But we're not talking about the question is, are you allowed to pervert justice?
No.
Right. 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 And that's the discussion taking place. Right. That you can't pervert justice. Right. That's just the bottom line. You're not allowed to. You can't do that. Right. You can't pervert justice. Right. Because you're standing in front of God, right? And God's seal is truth, is emes, right? So you can't do that, right? You can't pervert justice, right? Okay, I mean that's the bottom line. Okay, good. Okay. Okay. Verse number 4.
If you encounter an ox of your enemy or his donkey wandering, you shall return it to him repeatedly.
Right. So what does that mean?
Well, even if a person is negligent and keeps leaving his gate open, you still have to return it no matter what, or whatever is lost.
Right? Meaning that you can say, and over here it's of your enemy, right? Right? Means and how you allowed to have an enemy?
Back here.
Hmm. Right? And it now becomes very fascinating, right? Right? How you allowed to have an enemy?
How are you allowed to have an enemy?
Are you allowed to, right? It says, right? If you encounter knots of your enemy, right? So who's your enemy?
Could be your neighbor. Could be anybody.
Right? But so how you allowed to have an enemy?
If someone's evil.
If
Or
somebody's
someone-
evil, correct? Right? If somebody is evil, right? So here, so now, and so his object wanders off, right? His ox wanders off. So what do you say?
Well, the logic is, okay, it's my enemy and he lost his ox. I'm taking over.
You're right. Good for him. He deserves it. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Right? Right?
I got a new ox.
Right? So it's saying, right? And now I'm going to tell you something phenomenal. Okay? Listen to this. Let's say like this. Let's say you see the ox of your enemy. Again, so we're saying somebody who's wicked. And the ox of your friend and tzaddik lost. You see, at the same time, which one do you have to help first?
The enemies.
Probably the ox of your enemy because it's more of a challenge to you.
Right. So the Gemara says that what happens is that you go to the one of your enemy in order to break your evil inclination. Okay? In order to break your evil inclination. Right? In order to break your evil inclination. So therefore, since you're going to break your evil inclination, so then at that point in time, right, that would take precedence over helping the ox of your tzaddik neighbor that his ox got out. You have to take care of it, right? You have to take care of it first, right? And you have to do it repeatedly. Okay. Now let's see the next verse number 3.
5.
I'm sorry, 5. Yeah, go ahead.
If you see the donkey of someone you hate crouching under its burden, would you refrain from helping him? You shall help him with it. You shall help repeatedly with him.
Oh, so what does that mean? What is this talking about over here?
If you see, if there's someone is dealing with a problem, you have to help him, but you would like him to be able, he should be a participant. He shouldn't lay it off on you to do by yourself.
Okay, so give me the case.
I'm feeling growing pains.
Now, give me the case of what's happening here.
So, well, we're talking about a donkey. He's carrying a burden. The burden drops. Whatever he's carrying falls off. You're obligated to help the person pick up the whatever fell. However, he is also obligated to be a participant in picking up the burden.
You want to read verse 5 again?
If you see a donkey or someone you hate crouching under its burden, would you refrain from helping him? You should help him.
What does it mean crouching underneath its burden?
Is it the burden's too heavy for the donkey?
The burden is too heavy for the donkey,
Load?
right? So the stuff hasn't fallen off, right? But the donkey is crouching, right? The donkey is struggling, right, underneath the load, right? So what are you supposed to do? Next, what do you have to do?
Help the donkey lighten the
The
load.
donkey.
What?
You lighten the load for the donkey.
Right. So you have to help. So now, whose responsibility is it to lighten the load?
Sorry, say that again.
Whose responsibility is it to lighten the load?
Well, it's really the person who owns the donkey, but you have to, but you can be a helper.
You can be a helper or you have to be a helper.
You have to be a helper, but only, as I read it, it should be with the help of the owner.
No, very important, right? That's exactly what it says. Azov Tazov Imo, right? You have to, right? You should help repeatedly with him. Means he has, because he could go ahead and say, oh, look at that, you do good, or you have a mitzvah to do. So I'm going to leave you to unload my donkey. Then I'm going to leave you to unload my donkey. You go unload my donkey. And then I'll just, be sitting here drinking my coffee while you're working, and then I'll just say thank you and move on with life. Right? So what does the Torah say? Are you allowed to do that?
No.
No. The Torah says that if the owner refuses to help, then you don't have to be the one there to go ahead to help, to go ahead to do all the unloading all by yourself. Right? He has to help you. He has to help with you. Okay? Okay, now I do want to show you something else, right? So this is Matthew chapter 23, right, verses, right, 4 and 5, right? Turn to page 1049. 1049, Deuteronomy chapter 22. Okay, chapter 22 in Deuteronomy, right? Verses 1 through 4. Mom, do you want to read?
Yeah, but this is not talking about your enemy, apparently.
Let's go ahead.
Okay. You shall not see the ox of your brother or his sheep or goat cast off, and hide yourself from them. You shall surely return them to your brother. If your brother is not near you and you do not know him, then gather it inside your house, and it shall remain with you until your brother inquires after it and you return it to him. So shall you do for his donkey, so shall you do for his garment, and so shall you do for any lost article of your brother that may become lost from him, and you find it. You shall not hide yourself. Now continue.
Yeah.
You shall not see the donkey of your brother or his ox falling on the road and hide yourself from them. You shall surely stand them up with him.
Right. So it's actually interesting, right? These verses seem to mirror, right, a lot our verses here in Parashas Mishpatim. Right?
Right.
It's very interesting that these verses sort of appear twice. Right? Once over here in Exodus and once over here in Deuteronomy. Just interesting where they are. Right? So and here, right, so here's crouching on the burden, here it's falling on the road. Right? Right, would you refrain and hide yourself, right? Okay.
But this is referring to a person who's not your enemy, it looks like.
Right, even though if it's by your enemy, for sure it's by your friend, right?
Right.
And by your enemy really means just means somebody who is not a godly person, right?
Right.
Right, if somebody who's not a godly person, right? So even him you have to help, so for sure, a godly person you have to help. Right?
Is this referring also to lost items?
Right, isn't that what it is? Sure.
Like that, if you're not sure of who the owner is, you're supposed to keep it until you can find
Until,
out who it
right,
belongs.
until the owner, until you find the owner. Right, you're responsible to find the owner. And I'll give you a very practical thing that happens. It's very important to know. Let's say somebody comes to your house and then they leave and they leave some stuff behind.
You must have that all the time.
So what do you do? What do you do with that stuff?
Say, gee, I got a nice new coat.
You have a lost and found box.
You hold it until you find out who it belongs to, and you give it back.
So, yeah. So, so after I began filling up all the closets in my house with all the stuff that we got, my wife said, "You're going to soon move me out of the house because you have all the stuff that you had." So what do you do?
Don't you have to take ownership at some point and just?
Well, it's interesting, but how can you take ownership, right? It belongs to you, right? It goes ahead. It goes ahead, right? How can you take ownership? And how can you take ownership? And and how could you take ownership when it's not yours?
Is there a statute of limitations how long you have to keep it?
Until you find the owner.
So
Well,
you're
maybe
finding the owner.
it's 2 years or 10 years.
What?
Maybe it's 2 years or 10 years. You don't know who it belongs to.
Correct. So what are you going to do?
I mean, I guess if I found a puppy and I don't know, 5 years later, the owner shows up, I guess I have to give it back. Rabbi,
Okay, I think that, don't you have a thing in your house that says like after 30 days or something, it's no longer available? So I
Oh my
assume that's.
God, I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that. So what do we do in my house? In my house, we have people coming by all the time. We began putting up a sign by our front door
So it's a
that anyone
contract.
who comes in, we are hereby telling you that if you don't pick it up within 30 days, it is null and void, and you no longer own it, and it belonging to me.
Well, then do you donate it somewhere?
Yeah. I donate. It's like one piece of a glass, or
1 mitten.
yeah, it was just not very helpful. So it's a coat, 4 sizes too small. Right? You know what I'm saying? So what happened is that's why we hung up the sign, right? That's why that's why we hung up the sign, right? By the door, because what happens, it works like this. See, every Jewish home has a box called Mashiach's box. And in that box goes all the things that people have left in your home over the course of your hosting and traveling or whatever, the stuff that you found. So what happened was finally the Mashiach box began to take up my house. So what you can do is as follows. So what we did was we went ahead and we took a notebook and we began writing down in the notebook and describing each of the products, each of the things that were left. And we went ahead and we did that. And then we threw it all out, saying that we're going to pay the person. When Mashiach comes and we find the rightful owner, we'll reimburse them for the object that they left in their house, in our house. Right? That's something that you can do. But everyone's got the sort of, right? It just like everyone's got the Mashiach box. So that's what it is. And that's You have to have a Mashiach box, but this is where it comes from. You know? So you gotta have a Mashiach box because once you pick it up, it now becomes your responsibility to return it to them. Okay? Right? That's his verse here. Okay? Right? Because you have a responsibility. Once it becomes in yours, right? Once it becomes into your domain, now becomes your responsibility. Right? And you now have to make sure it gets to the rightful owner. Right? That's what has to happen. Right? So that's why this verse goes ahead. Right? It says that the objects you have to return it. And number two is that if you see their animal crouching under the load, that you have to go ahead and you have to help them unload it and help them with their animal. Okay? So
Rabbi, see,
yeah.
why? I mean, I get crazy if I've lost something and all, but why is this such a huge thing about the lost items?
A finding lost item.
Well, why is it such a big deal about? To me, it's just very important, like trying to find the owner, and I get crazy if I've lost something. Why? What's the deeper part of this?
The deeper part of it, and this, this is very interesting. One of the first things we teach, it's interesting when we start teaching boys Gemara. Okay, usually the first thing we teach them is a chapter in Bava Metzia called Elu Metzias. Okay, and Elu Metzias is all the discussion. What happens when you find the lost object? Whose responsibility is it, right, to give or not to give? So somebody once said, why do we start off with this chapter? Of all the chapters in the Talmud to start off with, why do we start off with this chapter? Right? And they said the following idea, which I think is very profound. The first thing we want to teach people, okay, right? The first thing we want to teach people is we want to teach them that things have owners and you have a responsibility to make sure that anything that you have belongs to you and is not somebody else's. Right? It's about ownership. It's about rights and responsibilities, and you have to make sure that everything that you have belongs to you and does not belong to somebody else. Okay, it's a very, very important idea, right? But it's establishing, right, what things are yours, what things are not yours, what responsibilities you have with different objects, right? You don't have a right to go ahead, right? If it's not yours, you can't touch it.
Is
Right?
this kind of like? Is this kind of like in Noah, where I believe it was Noah, where what's mine is mine and what's yours is mine?
Sodom was like that, right?
Oh.
Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Or the Talmud even says even what's yours is yours, and mine is mine might also be Sodom, right? But it's very important to teach us that the idea is about ownership and who owns what and what is yours and what is your responsibility. Right? When you find a friend's lost object, you are responsible to return it. Like you have to go ahead and you have to make sure that the owner is found. Right? Now let's say you also have to be careful because let's say you get his dog. Okay, let's use your example. Right? You find your friend's dog. Now there's a problem. What's the problem when you find your friend's dog?
It's not yours. You can't keep it.
It's not yours, you can't keep it. But it's not right, but you don't know whose it is. And what happens while you have the dog?
You take care of it.
And take care of it. And what are you going to feed it?
You might get attached to it.
You're not getting attached to it. Who's paying for the dog food? Who's paying for the vet
You
bill?
are.
What?
You are.
Right. 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 So it's right. You are. So what that problem is now? But again, now once you find the owner, does the owner have to reimburse you for that?
I
No.
don't think so.
No. So he has to reimburse you
First.
for your expenses.
So interesting.
Really? But
You
what?
can't
But
go-
you could say no.
What? No, but now it becomes a different problem.
Hmm.
By the time a year or two passes, and he's not going to come to pick up his dog, right? There's going to be a big bill attached to that dog. So what are you going to do then?
You're not gonna do, you're just gonna be giving back the dog, be grateful that you don't have to deal with another one if you don't want to deal with him.
Right, but is that considered being a good guardianship on it? Right, because the dog now doesn't, the dog, you racked up this huge bill with the dog.
Well, the dog too, like I have a dog, my younger dog, he just showed up one day at night and I looked everywhere for the owner, couldn't find it anywhere. And it's been a year and a half and this dog, Eeyore's not going anywhere. If his owners were to show up out of nowhere, he's not going to go with them. So I don't know how they'd get the dog back. You know what I mean? Because the animals get attached. You know what I mean?
No. I hear that
It
problem.
wouldn't be good for the dog to go back with whoever because obviously they weren't. I mean, he hasn't tried to go back.
Just hope the dog
I
doesn't
hear
have
that.
puppies.
What?
Just hope the dog doesn't have puppies.
Oh no, he's fixed.
Right. So the dog has puppies. So who do the puppies belong to?
Dog.
Then you get them.
The dog.
So it's a very fascinating question, right? But they belong with the dog, right? But at the end of the day, but it costs you now a lot of money because now you got a whole farmyard full of dogs. And all belong to the first guy, right?
If
So
I was to try to charge, let's say the owner appears and I'm trying to charge them, I mean, they're probably not going to say, oh, yeah, let me pay you. They're just going to be
Right.
grateful that you found them.
They're more likely to say,
I'll
you have
sell
such
the-
a nice dog.
right? So I would so you sell the dog and you take your money and you give them the rest.
Yeah, but if somebody found my dog and then tried to sell it and gave me money for it, I don't think that would work. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be like, oh, thanks for the $50. You know, thanks for the $100 or whatever. Like, I want my dog.
Right. So
Yeah.
It's very interesting. A dog might not be such a good example because
You wouldn't for sale. All right, I hear you.
all those animal lovers out there think the rabbi is nuts. All right, let's go to something that you won't get attached. Let's say your rattlesnake.
I'm glad you didn't say guppies.
Right? Or I don't know what you know, whatever it is, you know, some sheep, I don't know, whatever it is, right?
If I had a rattlesnake,
Armadillo.
I'd just let him keep it.
Armadillo.
An armadillo.
Or we can just go back to the ox story.
Right? So you're allowed to use it. You could hire out the animal to work because the animal has to earn its board and keep. Because otherwise you're not doing the owner a favor by racking up the bill, and now he's not going to have any ox left when he comes back to collect it. Right? That becomes a problem. Right? Of where you're going to go and collect it from. You're not helping the person. You're not helping the person to go ahead and you're not helping them to go ahead and to get his oxen to do something with his ox. Right? You're devalue. You're not watching his animal because you're racking up a big bill. Right? So you have to be able to do the animal, to use the animal so that it doesn't. And what you might have to do, let's say with an ox, it might be easier just to sell him, right? And then when he comes back, just give him the money of his ox. And I don't know how to help you all with the sentimental attachment to the dogs. You know, how we evaluate, how we have to go to a rabbi with a longer beard than mine. But
That's cute.
but at the end of the day, part of you watching an animal is to make sure that the animal the animal is being kept, and that you're going ahead, you're not going to rack up this big bill.
So when do you get rid of it? When do you decide that, okay?
Well, yeah, I think to me what would sound reasonable is you wait like a week or 10 days. You know what I'm saying? You know, you post it on your Facebook page and maybe your Twitter feed. You know, and you know, because in Talmud it talks about that 3 times a year. Remember, everyone went up to Jerusalem. All the males went up to Jerusalem. So what would happen is there used to be a rock, this big rock, where everyone used to bring all the stuff that they found and would hang it out by the rock.
Really?
Yeah, and they would leave their cell phone numbers where they could, you know, be contacted. And if somebody thought they was theirs, they would call a guy, right, try to get in touch with him, and would give them would have to show him would have to show him, you know, would have to prove that it's his.
So an old school lost and found.
Right. That was in the olden days. Now I guess that we would make one big I don't know, what's it called? Angie's List or one of these other places.
Craigslist.
A post.
Right, sale.
Put it
A
on
post on
Craigslist.
Letgo.
Every Craigslist and have a lost and found.
Lost ox.
Somehow have a way to track lost objects that people could go ahead and find them. But it's interesting, it becomes your responsibility to go and to give it to them. Now, let's say you found money. Let's say, for example, you found a $20 bill. Okay? And some people says, oh, perfect, I you know, I'm from the same town as you, I lost $20. Do you give them the money back?
I think so.
I think you would want more indication that they knew where it was lost and approximately when it was
Give
lost.
it back to, right, what you're saying, Kenny, is 100% correct, because you go ahead, you give the $20, right? You give the $20, but the problem now is that as you give the $20, that as you give the $20, maybe it belongs to somebody else. So now after this guy walks out, half an hour later, another guy walks and says, I also lost $20. He said, well, I gave it to the first guy. He said, well, how could you give my money to the first guy?
You know what we used to do with phones at work and stuff in the nightclub industry? We used to ask them what exactly, they said, I lost a phone. I said, well, what kind is it? And we'd go into the phone logs and we'd be like, okay, who's or like, you know, who is the last person you called or something? Like, you know, like we
Right.
yeah.
Very good. Right, so that makes
But
sense.
money is harder because you can't, money, we just basically, unless we couldn't do anything with it. Unless somebody came up to them and said, I lost it, and you just found it, then you know. But you wouldn't say, hey, has anybody lost $100? Because everyone would say they would.
Right. No. That's exactly what the Talmud says. Is that there has to be
Yeah.
some identifying features on them. Because if there's no identifying features, and then at that point in time, right, then at that point in time, you can't give it to them.
I'm going to start signing all my money.
What?
I'm going to start
Signing
signing all
it,
my money.
yeah, right?
Can you say that again?
I'm going to put my signature on all my money.
Yeah.
People will write happy birthday.
Then what happens when you give it to me? Do I have to erase yours and put my name on it, or how does
I
that
would
work?
think so.
I know, that would be kind of hard. 'Cause
Cross
then
it out
then
and put
they'd
yours
say
under
you
it.
took my money.
Cross it out. Put yours under it.
Right, no. It's you know, we laugh about this. This is a complicated problem. Right? How do we make sure that everyone that everyone's going to get the money that they're supposed to get. Right? It's a complicated question. It's not a simple question. Right? But in laws of ownership, right? You have to go ahead. You have to show that you had to show that somehow that it was yours, uniquely yours, and not belonging to somebody else. Right? That
And
becomes
how do you do that with money, which is generic?
correct. No, so the Talmud says it's very problematic. So the Talmud says, well, maybe if it's stacked in a special way, right? Or what I do is sometimes I'll fold the dollar bill in a unique way, right? That maybe people say, well, okay, that's kind of, you can't write on money. That's a federal offense. So there's no way that I will endorse that in class.
Really? I didn't know it's a federal.
I didn't know that.
You're defacing federal property, right? But here's a $10 bill, right? So what I might do is I might fold it and kind of maybe fold it like this, and sort of make it like into a triangle, like this, and then kind of maybe fold this up over here, maybe fold it like this. So now at that point in time, so this might not be an identifying symbol because most money is not carried like this.
By the way, the Fed is not the people. Isn't the Fed is that comes up with that allows the currency to go? They're not a federal agency. They're a private bank, so that wouldn't really be federal property. The Federal Reserve is not federal.
I think money is a federal. I think it's
The Federal Reserve Bank is private. It's not federal. The Treasury is federal.
Yeah, it's the Treasury that prints money. It's not the
No,
Fed.
so it would be okay. So it would be. You're okay. That was one part of it.
Federal Reserve destroys money.
Yeah.
What? It's so it's very interesting, right? Is that let me see what happened here. 1 second. Okay, Google, is it a federal offense to deface money?
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think it is.
Okay, it says with that.
The federal
definitely
law
is.
prescribes criminal penalties for anyone who mutilates, cuts, defaces, disfigures, perforates, or unites or cements together, or does anything to any bank bill, draft note, or other evidence of debt issued by any national bank.
All right.
Okay.
I never knew that.
Me neither.
So I might have done a federal offense. Specifically, this is in violation of Title 18, Section 333 of the United States Code, which says that whoever mutilates, cuts, disfigures, perforates, unites, or cements together, does any other thing to any bank bill, draft and other evidence issued by any national banking association, right?
18
You can't
U.S.
staple
Code
it
Section
either, apparently.
333.
You can't staple it to something then.
No.
No, it's very interesting.
Very interesting.
It's just right, but that's in the Talmud. The Talmud talked about that people go ahead and that they would go and they would right, if there's a way to if there's a way to identify it, right? That's really the question. Is there a way to identify money? Right? Or you could say there's a famous story that there was once a Polish landlord who said he lost a purse filled with 1,000 rubles, and whoever would bring it back would give him a reward of 100 rubles. So a Jewish person found it, and he came to return it to him. And they go ahead to return it. The account says, okay, this is my chance. He says, look, there used to be 2,000 in here, right? And he only returned it to me with 1,000. He's a crook. and he should be thrown in jail. Right? That we didn't have to give him the reward. So they went to court, and so the rabbi went as the defense for the guy, and he says to the judge, he says, listen, the guy didn't have to say anything. And could have kept all 1,000. Obviously, he came forward. Like you see, his honesty. He didn't want to keep it, right? So he said it was 2,000, right? So then he could have kept all 2,000. Nobody would have known the difference. He says, being that the case, so then it must be obvious then that this purse did not belong to the count, because the count said he had 2,000 rubles, and then there's only 1,000 rubles in his purse. So therefore, the Jewish person should be able to keep it, because this is not the noble's purse. And so they went ahead and they gave him the purse, right? So the Jew got 1,000 rubles, not 2,000, right? And nothing, right? And so the other guy lost out everything, right? But the idea is a very simple, right? It's a very simple idea. There are laws of what belongs to us, what doesn't belong to us, and we have to be very careful to make sure, right, that we go ahead and we make sure that we only hold on to things that are ours and not to things that are not ours. Right? So that sort of is really, and that's why, right, one of the first things that we teach a kid who does anything, right, is that you have to know what belongs to us and what doesn't belong to us, right? And we don't have the right to take something that doesn't belong to us. Okay, folks. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Nancy.
We
Thanks.
will,
You, Rabbi
hopefully
Betsy.
hopefully we'll be back on schedule. Vach and I are going to be trying to be getting away for a couple of days. So when we figure out when that's going to be, we're going to let you know. And as much as we love you, you're going to get a day off. If we're going
Great. That's great. Most
to
important.
let you know when that's happening.
Great.
Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you, you
Thanks,
too.
Rabbi.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Robert, it's nice to see you without a mask.